What's going on, guys? I'm Tim Kelly. This is Phillies Stoplight. The Phillies will have 2 All-Stars at least this season, which a few years ago, they were lucky to have 1 All-Star. Obviously, you're required to have 1, but they went close to a decade with only 1 All-Star. So at one point, having multiple was a big deal. In this case, it almost feels like a little bit of a letdown, but credit first to Zack Wheeler and to Kyle Schwarber. Both of them are All-Stars for the 3rd time in their career. Zack Wheeler turned in one of the best outings of his career Sunday. I have been literally the first game I covered as a Philly was Zack Wheeler, or of the Phillies was Zack Wheeler's first start with the team. So I've been here for his entire time with the club, and I've seen some incredible starts that the complete game he threw on the day they retired Roy Halladay's number, that's probably the coolest regular season game I've ever been at. But today was certainly up there in terms of great performances Zack Wheeler's had. And he's now put himself in a position with Paul Skenes. One of those two is most likely going to be the starter for the NL in the All-Star game. And you can make compelling cases for both of them. Each of them have almost identical dominant numbers that in most years would start. I'm going to get more in depth in that in a minute. But Kyle Schwarber's an All-Star as well. He's having probably the best season of his career, and he did tell me after the game he doesn't plan to do the home run derby. He said, we'll see what happens next year. Obviously, the All-Star game is here next year, but we don't know if Kyle Schwarber is going to be here next year, so it's possible he does the home run derby next year wearing a different uniform. I think the Phillies would prefer that not be the case, and my guess ultimately is that he will be a Philly next season and probably in the home run derby representing the team if Bryce Harper's not doing it. So Kyle Schwarber's an All-Star for the 3rd time, and he really, both of these guys, it can't be said enough that they're among the greatest signings in the history of the team. Both of their original contracts, obviously, now Zack Wheeler's onto his 2nd deal, and I think in a perfect world for the Phillies, Kyle Schwarber will be as well. But they will be in Atlanta representing the team at the least. The guy I'm surprised most isn't an All-Star is Trey Turner. I think he's leading the NL in hits. I get that. Francisco Lindor's the starter. Francisco Lindor probably deserved it over him last year when Trey Turner was the starter. That's kind of the ironic part. But Francisco Lindor's the starter. Elly De La Cruz, who is an electric, fun, awesome player, he's in the All-Star game as the reserve shortstop. And I'm not saying he's undeserving of being an All-Star, but if you look at their numbers outside of power production, I think Trey Turner's probably had a better overall season this year. And I would guess one way or another, whether it's somebody gets injured, somebody drops out, I think there's a real chance that Trey Turner ultimately gets added, because to me, he is the guy of those that didn't get in that's the biggest snub. Christopher Sanchez didn't get in. I was a little bit surprised by that. He was an All-Star last year, has been tremendous of late. In 17 starts this season, 7-2 with a 2.68 ERA, 2.86 FIP, and he's 6th among NL starters in WAR, so he's having a great season. The problem with him, I believe he's in line to pitch Sunday before the All-Star game, so even if they add him, it's kind of ceremonial most likely, because if you pitch Sunday, you don't pitch in the All-Star game on Tuesday. Ranger Suarez is the other interesting one. He missed all of April, which in theory would seem to rule you out, but Ronald Acuna is starting after missing all of April, and Ranger Suarez over 12 outings this season has been a machine. 1.99 ERA, 10 quality starts in 12 outings. So for him, I think the thing is, A, there's a chance this could be his last year with the Phillies, so I think a lot of people would like to see him represent the Phillies in the All-Star game. And B, he was selected last year and then didn't ultimately get to pitch in the game because he wasn't healthy. So it would be cool for him to be selected and potentially pitch in the game for that reason or those reasons, and we'll see if that happens. But 2 All-Stars for the time being. I would bet it ends up being 3 or 4 by the time the game is actually played. The most interesting thing, and the topic we're kind of going to get to here, is Zack Wheeler against Paul Skenes. I think you can't go wrong with either one of these guys starting. I know Paul Skenes started last year, but Paul Skenes, he didn't throw a complete game today like Zack Wheeler, but he pitched 5 shutout innings in Seattle, 10 strikeouts. He's below Wheeler in both ERA and FIP, and then in terms of WAR, slightly above Wheeler. Their numbers are extremely similar, and had Zack Wheeler, he missed a week earlier this year when the Phillies were out in Pittsburgh. after the birth of his fourth child, and maybe had he made that extra start, who knows where things would be. Right now, numbers-wise, I would give a tiny edge to Paul Skenes, but they're going to make another start, and I don't think Dave Roberts has to make this decision today. They may even make 2 more starts. So potentially this sorts itself out, but I do feel like this is going to be one of those things that's heavily discussed the next couple weeks, and there's going to be outrage regardless of who's picked. The reality is Paul Skenes is one of the best young pitchers I've ever seen in the game, and Zack Wheeler is one of this era's best pitchers, and with each outing like this, it feels more and more like one day we're going to be having the Hall of Fame discussion. I don't know if he's going to get in. I don't know how history is going to view pitchers from this era, because it's almost impossible with how pitchers are used today to compare them historically, even to guys that were pitching 15 or 20 years ago, because it's just such a different expectation from pitchers than what it had been for the first 150 years that baseball was played or so. So I don't know, but I think looking at these two, it would be cool for Zack Wheeler to start it because he's from Georgia. I think that would be cool. My conspiracy theory on this, in 2021, when Dave Roberts was last the manager, the Dodgers had won the World Series in 2020. They just won the World Series this past year, so Roberts again is going to be the manager. He picked Max Scherzer to start the game, and Max Scherzer is one of the best pitchers of all time, but in 2021 was not the most deserving candidate to be the All-Star Game starter. You could have gone with Wheeler, Corbin Burns. There were different options that were more deserving at that time, and he instead went with Max Scherzer, and a few weeks later, Max Scherzer got traded to the Dodgers. Now, I'm not saying the Pirates are going to trade Paul Skenes this summer. I don't think they are. But if you're thinking a year or two down the road, if you're Dave Roberts and the Dodgers may want to be in play for Paul Skenes, it might not hurt to have Paul Skenes remember that when you had the opportunity, you picked him to start in the All-Star game. And I get that he started last year, and maybe that's what the calculation is. He started last year, he's done it. Wheeler's in his mid-30s. This is probably his last chance to potentially do this. He's from Georgia, so you have the local connection. Maybe it's as simple as that. The other possibility, though, is that Paul Skenes, you can legitimately make the case as most deserving of doing this. You have the Livy Dunn angle that he's a celebrity in that regard, and more people maybe come to the TV. But you can also say that if he pitches later in the game, people stay to watch the game. So that debate can go either way. But I think there's going to be a lot of outrage. If I had to make a selection right this second, I'd probably pick Paul Skenes by a slight edge. But Zack Wheeler has taken something that wasn't really a race a few weeks ago and turned it into a legitimate opportunity that he could start this game. And for a guy that so many times has been the best man and not the guy actually getting married in the wedding, it feels like maybe this is his time. This is his turn to start. And with the way he was NL Pitcher of the Month and starts off July by throwing a complete game, it'll be hard to argue if he is ultimately the pick. Now, the Phillies are done at Citizens Bank Park until after the All-Star break. They will now head out west with the Giants. They lost 2 of 3 to the Giants in mid-April, but the Giants look different since. They've acquired Rafael Devers since then. Devers is one of the best hitters in baseball. Whatever you think of how he handled the situation in Boston, it's unquestionable how good of a hitter he is. He's only hitting .221 though since going over to San Francisco, so that's something to watch. Also worth watching, Matt Chapman is just back in the lineup from a sprained right hand, one of the game's best defensive players, and then also someone that can hit home runs. So he is back for this series. Christopher Sanchez is going to go game 1. Just in a tremendous groove right now. Really, the top 3, and for the most part, Jesus Luzardo, they are in a tremendous groove right now. So Sanchez goes game 1. Taijuan Walker goes game 2. Basically out of necessity, that's what Rob Thompson said Friday when they announced that he'll go back into that spot and make Abel was optioned. Andrew Painter is not ready at this time. Taijuan Walker has a 3.62 ERA and 8 starts this season, so it didn't really seem to be working out as a reliever, but in general, he's had a bounce back relative certainly to what he did last year, and I don't think you're in a bad position, especially given how good you feel about your top 4 to have him rejoining the rotation, whether it's just for one start or for a little longer than that. He goes game 2, and then Luzardo goes game 3, and Luzardo to me has really had one of the strangest first halves that we have ever seen. He's got a 4.44 ERA, which if you told me that before the season, I'd say, wow, It's a really disappointing output based off of what you expected from him coming into the season. I'd wonder if he's healthy. He is healthy. He had the 2 really bad outings, and then Friday also was not good at all. So you have those that have really upped his ERA and really kept him from being in the All-Star game discussion, but he's still like top 5 in WAR among NL pitchers. He's pitched a decent amount of innings. Like 75% of his starts, he's been an all-star caliber pitcher. The problem is the other ones have been disastrous, and they need him to kind of correct that. There was an issue with tipping pitches, and now he's pitching out of the stretch. He's had some issues doing that, so they need to correct that, because for the most part, he's been really good, and whether it's out of the starting rotation, the bullpen, or some combination, he's going to be a really big piece for them come October. So Philly's got a crucial series this week in San Francisco against a team that they could be competing for playoff positioning with. They could easily both end up being wild card teams. So there's that. The Phillies have 2 All-Stars, and there will be a ton of Phillies content as we get into trade rumor season on Pattison. That's going to do it for today's episode of Phillies Stoplight. Check out all our content on Pattison.com, and I will talk to you guys next time.